a gluten-free flour. You can use if you have, it's sort of like gluten-free, like matzah meal. They definitely make that. So no problem. So I am, oh, wrong measuring. I'm going to mix up my eggs with my 1 cup of sugar, and I'm going to mix that up until it's thick. I see a couple questions. Can you use almond flour entirely or potato starch for those who don't use matzah meal? Yes, you could do half a cup of almond flour and half a cup of potato starch. I understand matzah meal it's rough, but this is matzah cake meal and it's not a whole lot. Can you make it nut free? You can. I would suggest you look for another recipe. This recipe relies on almond paste. So if you have a nut allergy, that I would search for a different recipe. I'm really sorry. I know that's a terrible answer. There definitely are rainbow cookie recipes that don't use almond paste. It's a little bit of a less authentic flavor, but of course, if you have a nut allergy, then that's fine. But I apologize because this one is, it's all nuts. Okay, great. All right, so I'm mixing up my eggs and sugar till they're nice and thick. And then I'm gonna add in some of my other ingredients. I'm gonna add my butter and my crumbled almond paste. All right. You can do this with a hand mixer also, but it makes a lot of noise on a video. All right, there we go. Thank you for sharing the recipe again. Preheat the oven to 350 if you are baking along, absolutely. And then we melted the butter in the microwave. This is nice and thick, wonderful. I'm now gonna add in my crumbled up almond paste. For those of you who might have missed it at the beginning, this is the almond paste I'm using. You can find almond paste kosher for Passover. Look in your kosher for Passover aisle, or you can order it from a kosher specialty market. You can get things delivered from anywhere these days. So if you don't think you can find it locally and you know you wanna make it, just order it online. Amazon has everything. I know they're big and evil, but super convenient, awesome. Okay, I think I saw some other questions. Almond extract and almond paste. They are not interchangeable. They are two different things. Almond extract is like a vanilla extract, right? Comes in a little bottle. Let's find this or this is almond extract. Smells very almondy. It's a nice smell, but it's totally different. It's a liquid. They're not interchangeable. This is a paste, and it's gonna give it a really nice texture and a really delicious scent as well. All right. So I'm whisking this together, and then I'm gonna start to add my melted butter and then the rest of my ingredients. What about coconut sugar to avoid the sugar? Look, I cannot vouch for coconut sugar working. I know that if you want to use Splenda is like a 1-for-1 replacement, I believe, when you're using baking. I know it has an aftertaste. This is neither one of the recipes I'm making today are low sugar. I'm not really known for my low sugar recipes, but we do have a whole roundup on the Nosher. Maybe Debbie can bring it up of low sugar, more diabetic friendly, traditional Jewish recipes. If you're comfortable working with coconut sugar, go for it. I just can't promise that it will work or not. All right, so I'm adding my melted butter to my eggs and my sugar and the almond paste, which I have already whisked up. And it's really, you can see, it's really nice and thick. And then the last, most complicated part of this recipe is splitting it into 3 equal parts, and then we're gonna dye it, and that's fun. Dye it with food coloring. And you're getting a workout in, so score. Here's a little tip. My friend Danielle always taught me, she is a trained pastry chef. When you have a liquid in here, use a little scrapey thing and just get all the rest of it out of here. It could be eggs that you're working with or a melted liquid, or even just like a cake batter or brownie batter. You wanna get all those last little bits in. Using a spatula like this will really help. I also just love using tiny spatulas, not just because they're cute, but I find them to be very helpful. So great question, Heidi asked if I use gel food coloring or drops. For this one, I use drops. if I was dyeing challah or frosting for cupcakes or fondant for cake decorating, which I almost never do anymore because you can find beautiful cakes everywhere, I would use gel. This is a deeper, richer color, but drops for this are just fine. Plus, it's harder to find. It's harder to find kosher for Passover food drops. So I'm just using plain old food coloring for this. Can you use your KitchenAid? Absolutely. You can use your KitchenAid. In fact, it'll go faster and easier if you use your KitchenAid, or you can use a hand mixer. But you can also do it by hand, no problem. Okay, so now this is the hard part. Now I need to be quiet and concentrate because it is the most complicated part, the whole thing. Oh, I didn't add the flowers. Who's yelling at me over here? Somebody needs to be telling me what to do. All right, so now I'm adding a half a cup of matzah cake meal and a half a cup of almond flour. So here's a note that I made in the recipe, which is good to know. I think almond flour is a lot more readily available these days as people are experimenting with more and more gluten-free flours. Oftentimes I buy it from Trader Joe's. You want almond flour, not almond meal. Almond meal will be much grainier and thicker, and it's just not going to have a nice texture in this recipe. And then a half a cup of the matzah cake meal, which is, this one is very fine. Somebody asked if you could use potato starch, and yes, you can use potato starch. Okay. Did I forget any ingredients? A half a teaspoon of salt. Alrighty. And then if you want, you can add vanilla, but it is optional. All right. By the way, you could also add extra almond extract if you really love that almond flavor. My kids don't, so I pull back from a little bit, but if you love it, your family loves it, whoever you might be sharing some Passover cookies with or freezing them for later, add almond extract instead of the vanilla or in addition to. Fantastic. Okay, look at this. This is a nice, thick cake batter. So that's great. That's what we want. Now, I am sure that somebody here is smarter than I am and will figure out a better way to do this. But here's how we're going to do it. We are going to split this into 3 bowls. And what I'm going to do is I'm using my food scale because I'm not good at eyeing this. You don't have to do it. And if it's not perfect, you don't measure it exactly in all 3, that's also totally fine. It will still be delicious. So I am going to zero out my bowl. And I am going to start scooping so that I can roughly measure the same amount in all of my bowls. So what I'm trying to do here is make sure that I have the same amount in each of my layers. I'm going to have a white layer, I'm going to have a green layer, and I'm going to have a red layer. So I want each of my batches to weigh roughly the same amount so that when I bake them, they're going to be roughly even. And then when they stack up, you slice into them and you see 3 beautiful layers. Are they going to be delicious if they're not perfect? Absolutely. And this is also the kind of thing that if you've never made it before, it might take a little while to master. So don't be hard on yourself. This is the hardest part. This also might come very naturally to you. Whereas I'm struggling to figure out exactly the best way to do it. You might say, oh, that's no problem. You just do blah, 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 and it'll be fine. So if you have a suggestion for doing it easier.
Yeah, and there's a suggestion. I was going to make it too, but I didn't want to interrupt, which is that you could have weighed the whole bowl first.
Oh, see?
But thank you, Sherry, for making that suggestion.
Thank you. See, I knew it. Now, okay, Sherry has to take over and teach the class now. Sorry, Sherry, can you take over? Great. Fantastic. So I'll be doing that next time. God, see, I lack such common sense about things sometimes. All right. All right, so again, I'm keeping one totally plain, and then I'm gonna start adding my food coloring. I know this is a little time consuming, it's taking a long time, but then this is the hardest part because then the rest of it is so fun and easy. I'm really looking forward to Debbie making fun of me about this tomorrow.
Shannon, a couple questions.
Please, go for it.
Instead of dye, can you use raspberry or strawberry juice?
You can use whatever you want. You can go for it. I know some people do not want to use food coloring. Absolutely, I totally understand. So you go for it. You also don't have to dye it red, white, and green. I mean, those are the flags of the Italian flag, right? Like you can do them 3 shades of blue for Israel. You could do them your kids' favorite colors. You could do them rainbow colors. You don't have to do this. You can dye it whatever you want. You can use natural food coloring. Go for it. Absolutely. So here's my green one. I'm just making it the way I always make it, but you should do it. You should do it up. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Other questions? Any thoughts about swapping the eggs out to make this vegan? God, you guys are very difficult tonight with all these swapping out questions. Passover is a hard holiday if you're vegan and with the desserts. So I don't know. I don't bake a lot with egg replacements. I know you can use flaxseed and water as an egg replacement. I also know that you can use, I need one more spoon. Hold on a second. You can use cornstarch and water also as an egg replacement, but I'm just not sure in a recipe that's using 4 eggs if it's gonna turn out the same. So if you have a lot of experience with egg replacements, I would say go for it. But if you don't, I would look for a different recipe. I think fruit tarts are a great vegan-friendly recipe for Passover or anytime during the year. You can make your own chocolate truffles, very nice and easy. And then you can roll them in different things like cocoa powder, shredded coconut, nuts, sprinkles, crushed pistachios. And that's a little bit more adaptable. You know, I'm of the mindset generally during Passover, and especially with desserts, that less replacements is usually a better product. So if you have to start being too creative and figuring out a way to replace this and replace this, look for something else. It will turn out better. There's nothing wrong with simplicity. There's nothing wrong with good, simple recipes, which is a good time for maybe for Debbie to share some of the Passover dessert roundups we have that might give you guys some other ideas. We have 9 Passover recipes that don't suck. Those are some of my favorite Passover recipes. And we also have a roundup of some of the best Passover cake recipes out there, because I always get the question, oh, it's my kid's birthday, my mom's birthday, my grandma's birthday during Passover this year, and I want to make a cake. What do you think? First of all, I think you can buy one from a bakery, which is also great and easy. But if you want to make one, there's some great ways to do that. Okay. Oh, I have a question about the Italian connection. That's a great question. Let me get these in the pans, and then I will share a little bit about the history of coconut macaroons and the Italian connection, which is a super fun story, which I recently learned about from one of our writers. And thank you for the person who said I have a great sense of humor. Thank you. I will tell my husband that the next time he is complaining about me. I appreciate it. Okay, so now the last step in this long process of making these cakes. It's not complicated. You just have to be precise about it. Again, I have my 3 8x8 pans, 8x8 square pans. I bought them for like 30 cents. They're lined with parchment, and I'm gonna grease them one more time on top, just with cooking spray. You can use, they definitely sell Kosher for Passover cooking spray. You can use olive oil cooking spray. It's totally fine, whatever you want. Coconut oil cooking spray. And then I'm gonna spread this thick cake batter into each of the pans. Am I missing any questions while I am doing this, Debbie? No?
No, you're good.
Okay, fantastic.
People are commenting that only in a Jewish cooking class can you tweak one recipe and find 97 ways to tweak it. So.
Or complain about it. Yes, yes. Thank you. I really, really love that. Hey, Goldberg, I think Roxy really needs to go outside.
Can you make them ahead of time and freeze them?
What's the question? Can you make them ahead of time and freeze them? I love this question. Why do Jews freeze everything? So I am actually going to freeze part of these. And the way that I'm going to do it is I'm not going to assemble the whole thing. I'm going to freeze the cakes individually and then assemble them in 2 weeks. That's what I'm going to do. I think you could freeze these. I kind of like to, you know, I think with the chocolate on top, I think they're going to come out a little bit better. If you want to do the cakes ahead of time and then assemble them at the last minute, I think they will taste fresher. And that's how I'm going to do it. And that would be my suggestion to you. So you can see I am spreading this cake batter. It is thick. It's like thicker than a brownie batter. So I'm just getting it into all the corners so that it's going to bake out up as evenly as possible. I don't want it to be really thick in one place and thin in another place. Okie dokie. Okay. I'm the one eating these. Don't complain, it's my fingers in this. Don't worry, I'm not sharing these with people. It's just me and my family. Please leave the comments aside. Next pan. The red one. Hopefully I weighed these right. Sherry, for that wonderful tip. Now I will be doing that the next time I make these.
Shannon, do you remember about how many ounces were in each bowl? Is that number still in your brain?
Yes, it was about, I was somewhere around 9 ounces. Yeah, great question. Great question. Partner's paper have to be kosher for Passover? I mean, I think that is a very personal question. Does parchment paper have to be kosher for Passover? I'm sure that you can find somebody who will say yes, and I'm sure you can find it in a kosher marketplace. My opinion is that you're not eating it. And if your pans don't need to be marked kosher for Passover, then your parchment probably doesn't either. But you probably could find somebody who would give you an answer that it does. So, you know, you should do what feels right to you or what you feel like are the standards of your community and your level of kashrut and comfort. That's a good question for my former yeshiva educated husband. Does parchment paper need to be hectured, kosher for Passover?
Need to? I mean, water and aluminum foil don't need to be hectured. They are, and some people require them to be.
I don't know if you heard that. So I think my answer stands. Thank you, Erica, for your comment. Yes, I agree, but somebody will always complain. Why are you licking your fingers when I'm in my own kitchen? So, you know, whatever. I'm just gonna hedging off. Okay, last one. And then these are gonna bake up really fast. They only bake for around 8 minutes. This isn't a long bake. They're so thin. So that's also great. And while these are baking up, we are gonna start to work on our almond coconut macaroons, not macarons, macaroons. And they are very easy and really fun to do different things with. So our last layer of cake, and I can say that it feels like these layers are even. I'm glad my measuring kind of worked. And as you can see, that precision was the most complicated part of this recipe. After these are baked and cooled a little bit, we are gonna fill them with raspberry jam and then melt dark chocolate all over them. I have made them parve. I've made them with parve margarine. They turn out great parve. They turn out great dairy. So they're very easily adaptable. And they look so stunning when they're all done. They're very impressive. So, okie dokie. 3 pans going into my oven, which is preheated at 350 degrees. And then we'll get to work on our macarons. I need to move a shelf around.
Shannon, can I ask a question while you're moving a shelf around?
Yes.
Can you do just 2 layers, 2 pans, 2 colors, but if it's the same amount of dough? Is that just more dough per pan, longer cooking time?
Yeah, absolutely, you could do that. These are traditionally 3-layer, but if you're like daunted by that work or you only have 2 pans, go for it. You also, what you can do, which I used to do before I had the pans, and then my husband was like, just buy 3 pans, Shannon, this is ridiculous. I would bake 2 layers. I'm just checking on the cooking time, baking time. Okay. I was wrong. It says 10 minutes. So sorry. 10 minutes. So I just set my my timer for 9 minutes, and I'm going to check it out. If you only have 2 pans, bake your 2 layers. Wait for your 3rd layer. Take them out of the pan because they're going to come out really easily, and then bake your 3rd layer. And then you can assemble them. It might take a little bit more time, but you can still do it if you wanted to. Okay, let's clean up. Who's coming over to do all my dishes tomorrow?
And then do you bake all, you put 3 pans in at one time, and then you rotate them at any point?
I'm not going to rotate them. It's a fast bake. They're going to be fine. All in for the 10 minutes. All right, so next up we have an infinitely simpler recipe, a classic, almond coconut macaroons. You can also do this in a bowl, and you do not need a mixer for this. But we are going to use just egg whites. So let me start by reading through this recipe. Okay, 2 large egg whites, 2 cups of shredded coconut, sweetened shredded coconut. You can also use the unsweetened kind. That's totally fine. You can add a little bit more sugar if you want, or if you want them a little less sweet, that's fine. A half a cup of almonds. The recipe says whole almonds chopped, and that's fine. You can use that. I am going to use, they're in my cabinet. I'm going to use blanched almonds, so they're already chopped up. A 1/3 cup of sugar, vanilla, and then a pinch of salt, basically. So I'm going to start by separating my eggs. I am not going to get rid of my yolks. I'm going to save my yolks and hope that I can use it in another recipe this week. So everybody has a different method for separating their eggs. I just use the shells. Some people use their hands. Some people use a separate bowl. I feel pretty confident about my egg separating skills, so I'm just doing it right into the bowl. You do what you're comfortable with. Okay, so I'm going to save these. Maybe I'm going to put them in something I bake this week. Maybe I'm just going to add them to some scrambled eggs. I don't really like to waste it. There are a lot of recipes for like egg yolk cookies and things like that because you use so many egg whites with Passover desserts. So if you're wondering what to do with egg yolks, you can do a quick search for egg yolk cookies. Mousse, chocolate mousse is another great recipe to make. There's a New York Times recipe from Joe Nathan. It's olive oil chocolate mousse. It's my favorite recipe to make. It's a great, great, great recipe for Passover. Okay. So our 2 large egg whites. I need another spoon. I keep losing spoons. Hold on. Where's my spoon? And a whisk. All right. These were also at room temperature. And these are also going to bake at 350. Oh, you buy a carton of egg whites. Very smart. That's a great idea. Good, good, good. Excellent idea. 2 cups of shredded sweetened coconut. There's no process for this. You're just dumping everything into the bowl, basically. And then we're going to go do our almonds. If you don't want to use nuts in this recipe, you can just add another half a cup of shredded coconut. You don't have to. You can also add mini chocolate chips into a recipe like this. You could swap it out for a different nut altogether. I've done things like pistachios. The original recipe does call for almonds. Do you ever make your own almond paste using egg white sugar, and processed almonds? I don't. Do you, Phyllis? I have never done that. That sounds like a lot of work, but I bet it's probably less work than I realized. Oh my God, my spoon was right in front of me. Look at that. Okay, so I have my egg whites. I have my coconut. I need my sugar. Does anybody remember how much? A 1/3 cup of sugar. This is super simple. And then the fun part will come when we decorate it. We're gonna add vanilla. We're gonna add a pinch of salt. What you guys don't see is that I spilled some vanilla all over my counter. A 1/4 teaspoon of salt. When I measure salt, I don't measure it anymore. But you can measure it if you feel better about that. And then the last one will be our almonds. So just bear with me, throw some comments in, some questions, and I'm gonna go find my almonds. Okay, so I'm using sliced, I'm using these sliced almonds. You can use a whole almond, you can use blanched almonds. It actually doesn't really matter. And I am just using a half a cup of them. That's not my half cup, that's my half cup. Also a very nut heavy holiday. You can make a really great cheesecake or pie crust using kind of the base of macaroons, and you make like a macaroon crust and bake like a chocolate pie on top, something like that, and it's really great. So where do you buy egg whites? Usually you buy a carton of egg whites in like the refrigerator section. It's usually like near the eggs and the milk, stuff like that, right? Oh, Phyllis's husband makes, that's so cool. That's awesome. Great. I'm going to tell my husband that. Well, Phyllis's husband makes his own almond paste. Saying, Jonathan, get on it. My husband happens to be a really excellent cook, and at Passover, we really share the load. You can see that's it. That is as complicated as the coconut almond macaroons get. At this point, you could also add like a fourth a cup of mini chocolate chips to this if you wanted to. I'm gonna leave them nice and classic today. You could also use the more natural looking, big, thick coconut flakes. You can find them in like Whole Foods in the bulk bin section, and those give like a very striking and different kind of look to them. They're very cool. Oh, good, I'm glad. Yeah, the crust tip is really great. You could make like mini cheesecakes also using it as like a little crust. And I saw Ziggy Gruber of Kenny and Ziggy's in Houston have a really gorgeous coconut macaroon cheesecake. It was like this high with toasted coconut on top. I'm kind of dying to recreate it. He told me he would send me the recipe, but I know he's busy right now. I don't want to keep bothering him, but I really wanna make it just so delicious. And that says something if it's a Passover recipe, a Passover dessert that looks really, really delicious.
Shannon, one question. When you're measuring almonds, and it says half a cup of the almonds, or is it whole almonds? Is it the chopped? Like, is it always a half a cup no matter what, if they're whole or chopped?
So this recipe is confusing, and I will have to go back and look at it carefully, so I apologize, but I am measuring it already chopped up. That's a very good question, Lois. So these are
whole almonds, chopped.
Yeah. That's what the recipe says. Yeah. I'm going to spray, this is a cookie scoop. I have one that's kosher for Passover. Also, I'm going to spray the inside of it so nothing sticks. You can do it anytime you're using a cookie scoop for batter or anything like that. It also washes much more easily. If you're using any kind of sticky ingredient like molasses, honey, bulk barley syrup, if you spray your measuring cup that you're using, it will slide off and it will be much easier to clean. It won't be such a sticky mess that you have to like push off of it. So just a fun little tip. Okay, so I'm going to take my cookie scoop and I'm really going to kind of press down into it. It's kind of falling all over the place. I'm going to take some of that off. I'm going to take that excess off so that they're nice little tight macaroon balls, and I'm going to cookie scoop right on top of there. Then I kind of just press it down just a little bit so that I make sure that it's going to hold their shape. Okay. Same thing. I still have food dye all over my hands. I hope I'm not going to dye the macaroons. So if you love sprinkles, have kids or grandkids that you want to make these for, you could add sprinkles into this as well and make funfetti coconut macaroons. What size scoop? Oh man, that's the timer. So let me take the cakes out and then I will measure my scoop. Okay, so
Shannon, are you using a 1 inch or a 2 inch scoop?
give me 1 second. I'm having an issue with my oven.
Okay, no problem.
my cakes need a little bit more time because I think my oven wasn't 100% preheated. So rookie mistake. This looks like it's about a 1.5 inch, but let's pull out my ruler and then we'll know for sure. Let's see. Yep, this is a 1.5 inch.
You have a very organized drawer, Shannon.
Thanks. I better be. Well, I use a ruler all the time when I'm baking, especially when I'm doing classes because people are always asking how big something is or isn't, which is a great rule of thumb for baking because you want it to be precise. So great question. Cookie scoop, not an ice cream scoop. But let's say you don't have a cookie scoop, right? You could also use a tablespoon, right? Here we go. It's about the same size. Might be a little bit smaller. And there you go. So if you don't have a cookie scoop, you could use something else. Or you could also just use your hands and roll it into a ball that's roughly about the same size. You just want these to be the same size so they bake at the same temperature and they're even. And you want to pack them in a little bit so that they keep their shape. If you don't, they can have the tendency to fall apart a little bit. They'll still be delicious, of course, but you do kind of want to pat them down a little bit. Doesn't have to be aggressive, just enough so that they hold their shape. This is a small batch. It doesn't make a ton of cookies. So I do double or triple this recipe because you go through a lot of Passover cookies during, the holidays. And if you're sharing them with anybody or you're having anybody over, I know this year is going to be a little different for everybody depending on where you live, your comfort level, vaccinations, etc. So, but this recipe is making 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, about 10 cookies. So if you know that you're going to want to make more, you can double or triple this recipe very easily. Okay, so I have like a little bit of extra over here. I'm going to add it over here. I'm going to set my bowl aside. My hands are very sticky, so I'm going to wash them off.
So while you wash, Shannon, the frozen question, can we freeze the macaroons?
Oh my God, why? I would not freeze these, personally. I would make them fresh. You can see, look how fast that came together. These, I would not freeze. I think if you're gonna make like a mandel bread, something like that, freeze that. I wouldn't freeze these. My personal choice, but everybody's different. I know that the holidays can feel very overwhelming. I do think you could make these a few days ahead of time. You don't have to make them the day of the Seder or the day before the Seder. I think you could make them a couple days leading up to it, and they'll keep, store them in an airtight container, and they should be okay. Okay, I am gonna wash my hands and then check on the cake. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to start answering.
Shannon, how long will the macaroons stay fresh?
So I think there's a lot of moisture in these. So I think they stay fresh for a fair amount of time. So I would say definitely 3 to 4 days. I don't think you have to eat them within a day or 2. I think maybe you could push it to 4 or 5 days, but I would say 3 or 4 days to be safe. I'm gonna check on these cakes again. What is going on with my oven? Okay, now this is the way that I want them to be looking. All right, so I'm just touching them ever so gently. All right, here we go. Here is the cake. It's a little spongy. It's starting to brown. You know what? I'm gonna stick it under the under my phone so you guys can see the texture that I'm looking for. So Debbie, you can switch it if you want. So everyone can see.
I don't have it here anymore.
Oh, you don't have it. Oh no, what happened? I'm so sorry. Okay, so I'm gonna show it up close here. It's a little hot. So you can see it has little bubbles and it's starting to brown a little bit around the edge. That's perfect. That's exactly what I want. And now, because I had the parchment underneath it, it is going to peel up so quick and easily. Look at that. See, it comes right out of the pan, no problem. So I'm just going to set this aside and grab the other cakes out.
Shannon, there's a question that I always have too, which is that should you store them in an airtight container, or does that make them sort of squishy and ruin the texture?
That's a great question. All right, we're gonna pop these macaroons. If anybody's looking at the recipe, how long do I bake these for? Bueller. All right, let me look it up. And then I'll answer that question because it's a
15
fantastic
minutes. 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay, great.
Bake until cookies are set and edges begin to crisp around 15 minutes.
Fantastic. All right. I burned my hand, but I'm okay. All right.
The instruction is allow them to cool completely. So maybe if you follow that step, you won't burn your hands.
Thank you. Debbie, what would I do without your essential baking tips? Allow them to cool. Also, is a great tip is actually use your oven mitts and don't stick your hand into a very hot oven. A tip I never seem to learn. Okay, how to store the macaroons or really any of the desserts that you might be making during Passover. What I like to do is to take a container or even a big aluminum tin, and I like to layer them with parchment so that they're not all on top of one another. So if I'm making the macaroons, I'll line them up. After they're cooled, if I've dipped them, I don't want nothing sticky. You can't put like half dried chocolate in there, and then layer them between parchment layers and then cover the whole thing either with a top on that is airtight or cover it all in foil. I'll even stick them in the fridge. I'm like a good Jewish gal that I am in New Jersey. I have an extra fridge downstairs, obviously. So I like to keep my desserts down there for a few things, mostly so my husband doesn't eat them, and then also they stay fresh. Oh, that's a great trick. Chef's trick for burns, lavender oil. Great, thank you. That's really, really helpful. Okay. I wanted to share a little bit about the coconut macaroons and that story because it is interesting, right? Like, how did coconut macaroons end up this like staple of Ashkenazi Jews in America? And it's a story that originates in Italy with Italian Jews picking up on almond macaroons, not the French macarons. And so the Jews in Italy picked up these almond cookies, and they were Passover friendly because they weren't using any flour. They were relying on nuts, which is kind of what I was saying before about when you're looking for great desserts for Passover, you're looking for things that don't require a lot of alterations. You don't want to make something that has 4 cups of flour and you have to start changing it all in, right? And then there was the addition of the coconut, right? A very tropical flavor. And that came from French Jews, which got added in. And then all of the Jews sort of, like when they were migrating over to America, the coconut almond macaroons came over together. Coconut lasted longer than the almonds, so that was also one reason that it got added to the recipe, because they had longevity. Nuts, nut flours, nut oils, all of them can actually spoil. So if you have a lot of nut flours or nuts, or even sesame seeds and tahini, you want to keep something like sesame seeds or za'atar that has sesame seeds or nut flour, actually store it in your fridge or your freezer so you can prevent it from spoiling. Okay, all right, thanks, I saw that. All right, so while our cakes are cooling for a little bit longer, do we have any other questions I can help answer, or any Passover baking dessert things I can help with? No, everyone's quiet tonight. Okay, I bored you all making the 3 cakes. All right, so I'm gonna bring over our cakes, which are cooling. And I'm gonna take them out of the pan so you can see what they look like. So this trick for the parchment, you could bake them in the pans without it, but it just makes it so much easier to pull them out and to avoid breakage. So I kind of like, whoop, slip it right out, and then it peels really nicely and easily off of the parchment. So that's layer 1, the green layer, and you can see it's nice and spongy. Layer 2 are white. Again, I'm gonna pull it right off. And layer 3 are red or pink. And it's gonna slip right out. So I don't think I'm gonna be able to show you the chocolate step because we need to let these cool a little bit longer. But I will start by showing you the, see, look how easily it slips right off. Ooh, nice and clean, no breakage. It looks really nice and spongy like a cake, even though we didn't use any regular flour. So the next step in this is that you're going to layer raspberry or strawberry jam or apricot jam, whatever jam that you prefer. You can even mix them up if you wanted to. One raspberry layer, one apricot layer. But I love raspberry jam and I'm making them, so I'm in charge. So, and what colors do we do? What order do we do? I think we do white in the middle and with sandwiched in between a red and a green. All right. Hey, Goldberg, do you know where my my plates are? My plastic ones underneath there. Can you grab one of those for me?
Shannon, a few questions that have come in directly to me.
Sure.
Answer. Can I use oil instead of butter or margarine?
Yes, you could. I would use a neutral oil. I use vegetable oil personally if you were gonna do that because you're melting the butter anyway.
Can you do more than 3 layers?
Yes, you could definitely do more than 3 layers. Absolutely. Great question.
My sponge cake never rises. Not mine, but this is Harriet and Ken. What is a good technique to have the cake rise? I beat my egg whites to stiff, but my cake falls.
Are you talking about like a sponge cake, or you're talking about these cakes that we're doing right now? Sponge cake. Okay. Well, you should make sure that you have a sponge cake pan. Hey, Goldberg, can you find my sponge cake pan? You know what that looks like, the round thing in the middle? Your grandparents used to make a sponge cake all the time. You know what I'm talking about? It's the round tube with the thing in the middle. No. Okay, just can you look for it? Angel food cake. Oh, are you talking about, okay. Sponge cake, angel food cake. All right, so I would say, first of all, you wanna make sure that you're whisking your egg whites to the right consistency. This is not an area of my expertise, but there is a consistency that you're looking for, so I would Google that. If you're doing an angel food cake, this is the pan that you wanna do. This comes out. And the trick with an angel food cake is that when it comes out, you wanna, my husband over here, I forgot, the professional, he's telling me what to do. Thank you, Jonathan. You wanna flip it upside down so that immediately it's not sinking into itself. Gravity is gonna help it. You can stick it on top of a wine bottle. That's how I see it most often done. So if we're talking about that kind of cake, then that's what you wanna do. Or it looks like someone, Eva, maybe, who's had lots of great tips throughout, has something to use a medium eggs for it to work. Oh, you mean medium size eggs? I would love to know why. Oh, hi, okay, I have to shout out to my favorite passe of ladies, my favorite passe of ladies. Hi, Dana and Bonnie and Sarah. It's so nice to see you. Thank you guys for coming and cheering me on. I really appreciate it. And Dana, let me know how my skin is looking to you because I really feel like I need a facial. Okay, other questions. Okay, so I'm starting to jelly it up. I'm adding my raspberry jam in between my layers. So if you joined my Hamantaschen class, I talked about like this was not the time to use a good jam. You can use a good jam for this. You can use a nicer jam that you find because you're not baking the jam, you're just layering it. And again, you could do an apricot jam, you could do a strawberry jam. Raspberry is my favorite, and I always do raspberry. Okay. Oh, good, you bought the plastic mat. I'm so glad. Isn't it so helpful? I love using a silicone pastry mat for rolling out cookies and my challah. It makes it so easy. I'm glad that was helpful. That makes me super happy. I love using mine.
Chocolate or Nutella instead of jam?
Oh, Shonda, you can do whatever you want. Sure, you can layer it however you want. Absolutely, go for it. I mean, I'm the first person to tell you that you should experiment. So if you don't want to use jam, you want to do Nutella, absolutely. Send me the pictures. I want to see, which is a great time to plug both our Instagram account and our Facebook group. If you haven't joined our Facebook group, it's just the Nosher Cooking and Baking group. Come and join us. It's a great place to ask questions, find recipes, get tips and things like that. And also I love to see when you guys make things from the site, so share your pictures. You can also tag us on Instagram or at Jewish Food, or tag Nosh this, and I'd love to see the pictures. We share them often on our accounts. Yes, please come join us. And then if you're gonna make these cookies and put Nutella inside, definitely tag us. I would love to see how they turned out and what you think. Fantastic. Okay, another layer of raspberry jam. Again, could be Nutella if you want to. I'm a little traditionalist when it comes to rainbow cookies. They are a very beloved cookie of my childhood. And they're a great example of the influence of the immigrants of New York and how they influenced one another. One of my favorite Jewish food stories of the New York area is actually relevant for this week, was it's about corned beef and cabbage, right? We think of corned beef and cabbage as a quintessential Irish dish, and especially for St. Patrick's Day, which is coming up this week. But it's actually more of a Jewish dish. See, in Ireland, it was more traditional to eat slabs of bacon and cabbage than it was to have corned beef. Corned beef was something that Jews were making in the New York area. And as you may know, in the Bronx and the Lower East Side, Jewish immigrants, Italian immigrants, Irish immigrants, they were all living in similar neighborhoods. So they were picking things up from one another. And Irish immigrants saw Jews eating pastrami and corned beef, which was made from beef, not pork bacon. And they said that that kind of looked like the bacon and the cabbage that they had been eating. And that's how corned beef and cabbage was born. It actually wasn't really an Irish dish after all. It is uniquely American and influenced by the Jewish community. Rainbow cookies are an Italian cookie. They're not a Jewish cookie, but you find them at, a synagogue kiddush, a bar mitzvah, a bris, they're always in kosher bakeries. And so it's just a great place where, all the immigrants who came to America influenced one another and influenced one another's foods. And for me, especially as a child of a Jewish dad and Italian mom, recipes like this, food stories like this are especially meaningful for me. I grew up eating rainbow cookies, never homemade, always from bakeries. So I'm a little bit classic when it comes to the rainbow cookies, but I totally respect you having some fun and making them. Okay, so last layer is going on top. And remarkably, as I was talking, oh no, my layer broke a little bit. Okay, well that's okay, because we're gonna cover it all up. All right, there we go. So you can see, I still have my parchment on the bottom, but we have 3 layers. I'll push it up a little bit so you can see. Okay. 3 layers of green, trying to angle it the right way. Green, yellow, green, white, and red. Now comes the most fun part, I think, is that we're gonna start to melt some chocolate, and because they did cool, we can do it, and it's totally fine. How much time do I have on my coconut macaroons? I'm gonna check on them. Oh, I think they're done. Oh, they look really nice. Let me feel that. Oh, okay. I'm gonna take them out of the oven, and then we'll start to melt some chocolate. How much time do we have? Are we at 8:30 yet?
We are at 8:30.
Okay, so stick with me for a few more minutes if you want.
We're here all night, folks.
Oh my God, what is wrong with my oven today?
Shannon, can you use white chocolate?
We can, but white chocolate can be hard to work with, and you're covering a lot of surface with it. So I wouldn't say no, but I'd say be careful. White chocolate isn't really chocolate, it's really sugar. So you want to use, if you're going to use that much white chocolate, you want to use a good quality white chocolate. It may be harder to find a good quality that's kosher for Passover if that's important to you. So I'm not telling you don't, I'm just giving you the warning that it could be a little bit trickier than using dark chocolate or bittersweet chocolate. Okay, so here are the macaroons. Look, they're nice and a little bit brown on top. Okay, I'm gonna let these cool. I like to use a metal spatula to get these up off the tray. And just make sure that they don't stick. So I'm going to do that right now before I make sure that they're not sticking. Can you see what I'm doing? I should move over there, sorry. So I'll just show you what I'm doing. I'm just kind of scraping them up off the bottom so that I make sure that they don't stick. Okay? All right. And then I'm going to let these cool before we start decorating any of those. If you were here for Hamantaschen, then you saw how we drizzled melted chocolate over the top of them. It's absolutely the same for these. So it's not complicated or fancy. It's just one little extra step. And you can either drizzle them by taking your chocolate and doing this, or you can dip the bottoms, or you can dip half of them. I've even seen people dip the entire macaroons right into the chocolate. I mean, whatever floats your boat, except for the white chocolate on these. Okay. Other questions that have come up. Looks like the chat is quiet, so we are good. We are good to go. So I'm going to put these aside.
And the question is maybe not just for you, but for everyone, but what do you look forward to most about baking for Passover?
It's a hard question. It's a lot of work, but I think that, you know, when you like feeding your family, that makes me very happy. And when my kids are happy with what I made, that makes me very happy as well. I think maybe the most satisfying thing is when someone's like, wow, this doesn't even taste like a Passover dessert, right? I think Passover desserts have kind of a bad reputation. So I think when people are like, wow, like and impressed, that brings me joy and feeds my ego. And it's the kind of thing, like I'm a planner. So for Passover, you know, it's all about the planning. You have to plan when you're going shopping, you have to plan your menu and you order, and you have to plan out when you're baking. So I kind of love the whole process of planning everything out and getting organized and doing things piece by piece, and it comes together in this great Seder dinner that everybody can enjoy. So that's kind of a long-winded answer. Okay. Oh, great question. Looking for a good idea of baking things with kids for Passover. That's a great idea. Well, I think macaroons are really easy and great, and you can let them pick if they want to put different things inside of it or on top. I think anytime you can like kind of give kids the opportunity to add their own touch to it and decorate, right? Like dip it in chocolate, add some sprinkles. I think that's super fun. The same for matzah toffee. Debbie, maybe you can bring that recipe up. You know, matzah toffee is Marcy Goldman recipe originally, and it requires melting butter or margarine with brown sugar until it's a little bit caramelized, and then you pour it on top of matzah sheets and bake it. Top it with chocolate chips or chopped up chocolate, and it turns into like this salty, sweet, crunchy, addictive dessert for Passover. And that's another one kids love because they love eating it. And you can also have fun decorating that with different kinds of chocolates, different kinds of toppings, sprinkles, nuts, coconut. You could do like some, you know, dried fruit and things like that on top of it and make it really fun. You could also do, you could just do chocolate bark is another one. Yes. Yes, it also is referred to as matzah crack, but we try not to call it crack. We just call it matzah toffee, because we don't want to, you know, feed into stereotypical references to drugs or anything like that. So great, fantastic. The matzah toffee recipe is in there. There's even a video, so you can see how it's made. So I am now melting up 1 cup of dark chocolate chips and a little bit of vegetable oil, which I'm going to add to it. And I'm going to pour that over the top of my rainbow cookie cakes. Other ideas. I feel like a couple people had a lot of tips in here. So other ideas to do with kids. Sherry, Eva, you had a lot of baking ideas in here. Any other ideas from people about things to make with kids? Yeah, a great question, Amy. When you are dipping the macaroons into chocolate, could you add solid Crisco to the chocolate? Yes, you can. You absolutely can. Or you can also use like chocolate melts or something like that. Great. Oh, chocolate covered dried fruit. That's such a great idea. Or chocolate covered regular fruit. You know, you can do chocolate covered strawberries and let them have some fun with something like that. You could do little bites of like bananas with nut butter in between them and dip them in chocolate and then let them set or freeze them even. They turn into really nice little frozen treats. So when I'm melting chocolate in the microwave, I'm always first doing it in a microwave safe bowl. And I am doing it in 30-second increments so that I'm not burning the chocolate until it's right. Okay. Great. Oh, matzo brie with kids. That's a great one. I did not grow up eating matzo brie. My dad did, but he never made it for us. And matzo brie is so great for kids, or really in general, right? Because you can make it sweet or savory. So if you make it sweet, kids love it. My kids love it with powdered sugar and maple syrup on top and some fruit. That's a really great one. Yeah, good idea. Thank you, Eva. Eva will be teaching the next class. Thank you so much. Oh, that's another great suggestion. Thank you from Scott. You can make a matzah house similar to gingerbread. In fact, I think we actually have an example of that on Kosher. A friend of mine, Danielle, who I referenced before, she did that and she brought it to our Passover Seder and they thought it was really, really fun. And you could even have that as an activity for the kids if you have kids coming for you. This year for Passover, you know, let them buy some fun decorations and candy and stuff and let them make their own. Absolutely. That's a great idea. I love that. Can somebody come and do that with my kids? I would imagine if you go to kveller.com, there's probably some other great ideas. And I actually think there's some good Passover programming for families and families with kids coming up with Kosher. I think there's like some craft opportunities, some craft videos, and maybe a make your own matzah thing. Debbie, do you remember with Rabbi Ruth coming up? So if you have kids and you're looking for things, do you know where people can find that? Is it on the hub?
I'm one step ahead. I'm posting the links as you go, Shannon.
Okay, great. So if you're looking for things to do with your kids, I'm pretty sure there's a couple different opportunities coming up with Kosher. So go check it out. Oh, matzah granola. That's another one too. Oh, speaking of matzah granola, you can make your own, have kids make your own trail mix. That's a good one for Passover that you can do. Curious how you'll think about holiday menu planning. Do you stick with dishes you know, switch it up every year, build a menu around an entree? Okay, that's a great question. Thank you, Corey. And this is a little bit hot, so I'm gonna let it sit for 1 minute and then I'll spread this on. We can do some macaroons and then I can let you go for the night. Like I said before, I really love the planning part of Passover, and I think a lot of people do. Even if they stress about it, I think secretly they really, really love it. So there's a few things that my husband and I like to make every year because we kind of figured out what everybody loves and what people were passing on. You know, I grew up with gefilte fish. Both of our families are Ashkenazi, so we were making gefilte fish, and then we realized at a certain point that nobody really wanted to eat it. So we always make latkes with homemade gravlax as an appetizer instead of gefilte fish. It is more work, but people also enjoy it more. So there's a couple things we always make the same: matzo ball soup, liver, and those latkes with gravlax. And then usually we have a little bit of fun with the entree and the sides. We always make 2 or 3 entrees depending on how many people are coming. The last 2 years we made Michael Solomonoff's braised lamb shank, and we'll be making that again this year, or lamb shank, lamb shoulder, because it's just a fantastic recipe and it's special, right? Like you're not making a lamb shoulder all year long, but this is something special. I know people love, of course, their brisket, but we always like to make something a little bit more special for Passover than just brisket. And then we usually do a chicken or a salmon. So every year we change it up a little bit, but we keep a couple of dishes the same. My husband makes fantastic potato kugel. He learned to make from his grandmother. So we always make that. My grandmother loves it and she's fully vaccinated. So she's going to be joining for our Seder this year, which is super, super special. So we have to make the kugel that she loves from Jonathan. So I do a little bit of a mix. My butcher, Harold, he loves to have everybody's orders in really early. So I do start my planning probably maybe even a little earlier than other people because we got to get those orders in for the meat. So that's how I think about it. All right. Oh, harosset truffles. That's a great idea. Love that. Liz, if you have a link for that, you should share it in the chat. That's a really great idea. Okay, so one of the last steps before we are all done, I'm going to start by, we have our layers over here, and we're going to pour our chocolate on top. And this is an offset spatula, and I'm going to use this to make a really nice smooth top. And then I'm actually going to refrigerate this before I start cutting it. One little trick for cutting it is to make sure that you use a nice hot knife, and you can dip it into a glass of hot or warm water in between you slice it, and it'll help make nice even cuts. But and I trim the edges off also. So this is, I'd like to think this is pretty similar to how when you go into a bakery, you are seeing, I really want to get a good side view of this. You can see the chocolate's starting to come down. You can see the nice 3 layers of those. And it wasn't complicated, it was just precise. We had to do it in a very specific way. Okay, so when this is cooled, I'll do exactly the same thing on the other side. If you only want to frost or cover one side of it in melted chocolate, that is just fine. You only have to do one. I like to do both sides. I mean, more chocolate is better, right? All right, and now we have our coconut macaroons. They are cooling. So here's the time where you can take a fork and you can drizzle it over the top, or you can take them, you can dip them on their side, so they're half covered, or another way to do it, you can dip the bottom and have the whole bottom be covered in chocolate. So there's a couple different ways that you can decorate those to your liking. You can add some drizzled white chocolate on top as well. You could do some drizzled caramel. I think you can really have a little bit of fun with both of these. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope that you learned something. I hope it was fun. If you have any last questions, I'm happy to answer them. I hope you'll come and join us for some of our other classes this week. We have one tomorrow at noon with Chef BJ Barhani of Sion Cafe in Harlem. She's going to be showing some Ethiopian food and talking a little bit about her Ethiopian Passover traditions. I think it's going to be really interesting, and I love the food that she makes. We have later in the week, we're going to be doing French onion brisket with Jake Cohen. He's super fun and answering all of your brisket questions if you've always struggled with brisket. So come check that out. All of the classes are listed on the Nosher.com, and Debbie can add it into the chat one more time if you want to see. You should have gotten it if you signed up for this one. So I hope that you will come and join us. Come find us on Facebook. Send me emails, nice ones, info@thenosher.com. I wish you guys a very meaningful, freedom-filled, happy, and safe Passover. And thank you guys so much for your support, and hope to see you soon. Okay. Thank you guys. Have a great night.